Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Terran strategy. Now in this video, our Terran player here is QXC, and our Zerg opponent is Damaga. We're going to go right into QXC vision. So first and foremost, for those of you who don't know, QXC is a very well respected and a very strong Terran player. And I almost wanted to make this video a player cam video just to follow him around because it's a pretty solid play from him. I'll probably pick another QXC game though when I get around to doing the next player cam. I felt like it was time for a strategy video though. So with that aside, let's hop right into things. We're going to be looking at opening up with a 1-1-1 build, Barracks, Factory, and Starport, one of each building, and some early game harassment, and then we're going to be looking at a Thor Drop. Thor Drop is a very popular tactic on this particular map, Lost Temple. It is very popular because it's very effective. Against Zerg players, you know, any early expansion, basically what you can do is you can drop your Thor right onto this ledge right here and you can attack the hatchery. Pretty strong tactic, very effective. A lot of times you'll see players bring SCVs with them as well to repair the Thor or also to build some missile turrets. So that's what we're going to be looking at. That's what we're going to be looking at there. Holy crap. Got a little stuck there for a second. So yeah, we're going to be looking at opening up with the 1-1-1. First and foremost, though, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is some early harassment. So what's different ways that we can harass Zerg players early on? Well, we know a lot of Zerg players like to fast expand. That's a very popular tactic. It's something that a lot of players do. So what can we do to hinder this? Dropping an engineering bay. Now, we're not completing the engineering bay. Basically, we just want the structure to be placed there and have enough life to severely delay the Zerg player from expanding. The Zerg player would like to be expanding right about at this time, and you can see what it forces him to do. Pulling 4 drones from the line. That is a lot of mining that he is not doing to no cost to you. All you have to do is drop this down, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to cancel it before he kills it, and then we take very little loss in the process. So this severely delays him and only sets you back a little bit. Very strong tactic, something you can, a small thing that you can implement in your games to delay your Zerg opponent from expanding. Something to realize, okay, we dropped that building. That sets us back 150 resources early in the game. That does slightly delay your typical build. You know, in a normal build, we're going to see a 10 depot, 12 barracks, 13 refinery. Because of those 150 resources, it sets us back. Realize we don't lose all of those resources once we cancel the engineering bay, but we do lose them at the beginning stages of the game. So that sets our timing back a little bit. Because of that, essentially, we saw a 10 depot, a 12 barracks, and a 15 refinery as opposed to the normal 13 refinery, and then also seeing a 17 orbital command as opposed to the typical 16 orbital command. So yes, like I said, going for this is going to set your build back a little bit, but in all honesty, it sets your Zerg opponent back much more. So that's something to consider. Another type of early harassment, placing a bunker with a marine near the expansion. If we can get this bunker down and we can get a marine in it, it severely delays him even further. If he throws units at it with a marine inside, it's going to set him back. And look at this, forcing him to pull lots of drones from his line just to deal with this. You know, really frustrating. He was also obviously bringing drones over here to transfer, but look at these 3 drones not mining when they should be. You may ask why he didn't use just Zerglings. Well, because with the SCV and the 2 Marines, we could kill what few Zerglings he had at that point. So back at the base, we're going to be seeing the 1-1-1 build, like I said. Remember, this orbital command was slightly delayed at 17, so was this at 15 because of that early engineering bay to delay our opponent. After that, everything's fairly standard. 21 orbital command, 22 is when the second refinery came down, and 29 was the starport. So we're getting one of each building. After that early harass, after that engineering bay and attempting that bunker harassment, obviously that didn't work, but you know, it still was effective in pulling some drones from his line and pretty much just being a nuisance. And being a nuisance is what you'd like to do. After all of that harassment, we're going to be following it up with some Hellion harassment, going into his base, trying to roast some Zerglings. Until they have that speed upgrade, that metabolic boost, you can do a lot of damage. You can kite them around all day as long as you pay attention and micro properly. So back at our base, this is the transition into the Thor Drop. So it's just, you know, this is a very aggressive playstyle, and I really like it. I really like to see this playstyle because it keeps your opponent on their toes, and you're hitting them with one obstacle after another. It can really frustrate and set back a lot of players. So we started off with the engineering bay, followed it up with the bunker harassment, then trying to get the Hellion harassment in. Because of that Queen and Spine Crawler, unfortunately, weren't able to do a lot of damage with that. But we're going to be following that up with a Thor Drop. Once that starport does come up, again, the starport came down at 29 supply. Once the starport does come up, getting a Viking first can be really good. This is going to do one of two things. Moving into his base, you're going to get a good scout without having to waste a scan, without having to waste that energy. You're going to see what buildings he has. Also, you can pick off overlords en route. But this is the transition into the Thor. So again, 29 was the starport. After that, at 31, we got the Armory. And then as soon as that Armory is up, we're going to be able to get our Thor. So like I said, we're getting a Viking first out of the starport, using this for scouting and harassment of overlords, and then getting that dropship, because we do obviously need a dropship to get this Thor out. So once the Thor and the dropship are out, we're going to be picking up the Thor with the dropship, and then we're also going to be trying to bring some SCVs with us as well. Obviously you can't carry more than the Thor and the dropship, so bring in the SCVs to just outside of where you're going to be dropping. You can pick it up after. You can see the overlord harassment that we're trying to do. Unfortunately couldn't kill that one overlord, but just basically being a nuisance, being aggressive as much as possible, continuing up SCV production. This is very important. At this point we're also going to be looking to expand at 58, but here's the big moment. This is pretty much all this harassment's been leading up to this specific drop, and this is going to be something that in most cases is going to be very devastating. We're going to drop the Thor on this high ground, we're going to be able to reach the hatchery, then we're going to pick up these SCVs and bring them up top as well. Again, they can be used for repairing as well as dropping missile turrets. We also want to get rid of this overlord, because that'll give him sight for his spine crawlers, or if he has roaches or something, he'll be able to reach that Thor if you're trying to fight on the ledge to take off this hatchery. But here you're going to be able to see exactly what I was talking about. Look at all that harassment killing his drones right now. When we get into that position, we can hit the hatchery. It's pretty devastating, and these SCVs are following along as well. Now we're doing this harassment, we're trying to be a pain in the butt, all the meanwhile preparing for that transition. Back at our base here, you can see the command center coming down. We have another Thor. This is why we want to make sure that we have any protection against possible Mutalists. We also have an engineering bay that went down. As we were moving to do this drop, we built that engineering bay. This is going to allow us to build these missile turrets, which is going to help in the muta defense. 1 or 2 missile turrets can really push back a group of mutalisks early in the game. You know, 5 or 6 mutalisks, 1 or 2 missile turrets will do a lot of damage to that. Later in the game, when he gets a huge ball of mutas, you know, 10, 12 plus, missile turrets aren't quite as effective because they can kill him quickly. But earlier in the game, they are very, very effective against mutalisks. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's go back to the base here. Orbital Command, that's what that's changing into, and then we're going to be dropping it over at this expansion. Again, preparing for that transition. We're after this point, basically our army composition, we're going to be going with bio, siege tanks, and some Hellions. Sorry, Thors and some Hellions. So we're going to be seeing bio, mainly Marines, Thors, and some Hellions. Doing some more drop, just continuing the harassment as much as possible. Obviously, at this point, we denied this expansion. We want to then, after that, check other bases for possible expansions. Check if he's expanded around the edge here. So what you can do, you have different options. You can send an SCV or a Hellion to run around to check those expansions. Or you've got this convenient Viking here. As long as it didn't die when you were doing harassment, as long as you didn't lose it to Queens or Mutalisks, you can just fly around, hold down Shift, queue up multiple positions, fly around and check these expansions just to see what's going on. Always a good idea to scout the map to find out if your opponent's doing anything other than what you expect them to be doing. You can see Tech Lab going down here in Reactor. This Tech Lab is obviously going to be for research, getting the stim pack, getting the combat shield. Going to be really great stuff. So one thing to realize, you know, we've got a really strong composition against a lot, but not everything. Speedlings and banelings can be very dangerous. You basically will have to be really good at microing away your Marines. Otherwise, speedlings and banelings could definitely devastate this army. We're going to try to offset that by getting some Hellions as well. Also getting that Infernal Pre-Igniter. That's going to help that extra damage against light units. Obviously, still his expansion on lockdown. We can see that he hasn't tried to come back here. Here's that scouting I was talking about. You can see that he was queued up to different positions, so we know he's here. Also, he's going to be queued up to this direction, so we want to be checking over there to see exactly what he's doing. We want to see any possible expansions. Something to realize, too, about outlying expansions. You know, if you deny your opponent's expansion in this position, you're pretty solid at that point, because if they have to expand this far away from their base here on Lost Temple, it is going to be very, very hard for them to defend against any drops that you do. You know, picking up a group of Marines or even sending in a group of Hellions to one expansion while you attack the other with your main force, having to basically dropping in multiple angles and hitting from multiple points is going to be really, really strong. It's going to be something that's very beneficial to you. You can see getting all these upgrades at this point. We haven't seen any harassment from our Zerg opponent. That's because he was going for Mutalisks, and you can see here clearly well defended against Mutalisks. We have these missile turrets. We have a nice ball of Marines as well as Thors. Now at this point that we know he's expanded, we're going to see QXC push out. Basically, that's what you want to do, you know. These outlying expansions, like I said, they're going to be very hard for your opponent to defend. So you do want to push out, you do want to take them out, because chances are good that you're going to be able to knock off one of these expansions that are so far away from his main base. So yeah, keep up scouting, you know, grabbing a Hellion to check these Elnagas just to see what's going on. That's a good idea as well. You can see here we know he's spreading creep, so he can try to reinforce this area if we do in fact attack, which we will be here. Keeping up production, always important. Something you always want to be doing. SCVs are coming out, Thors and Marines are coming out. Also, something else to realize is that when you expand, you can afford more buildings, so make sure that you get them. Don't stick with 3 or 4 buildings when you have your expansion up. Make sure you add some more. That's exactly what I was talking about right there. We tried, you saw that QXC tried to pull those Marines back to stay away from the Banelings, and that's what you would ideally like to do, but there were just too many Banelings and weren't able to do enough damage to them. Those Hellions actually would have helped a lot in that particular engagement. It would have been nice to have them up here. Unfortunately, we didn't at that time, but you can see roasting all of these drones. And even though we lost the majority of our army, you can see he lost most of what he had. He doesn't have this expansion saturated. This one, he had to pull the drones off just to help defend against that. And back in his main, you know, not a lot going on as well. So that's exactly what this type of harassment can do. Bringing those Hellions into this expansion now to see what he has, also to try to do some damage. And just, you know, as long as you've continued production, even if you lose a fight like we did up here, even if we lose all of our units, if you've continued constant production, you're gonna have reinforcements. You will always have reinforcements, and that's the key. That is exactly why we use these hotkeys. That is exactly why you want to maintain constant production. This Soul Thor getting stuck away from the rest of the group, that's obviously pretty devastating. We know we're going to lose these units, so try to do as much damage as possible. Take out that queen. That's actually very effective. Also at the same time, dropping in the back of his base. You see, this is exactly what you want to do. Multi-pronged attacks, hitting from different angles, just trying to be a nuisance and do as much damage as possible. And like I said at the beginning of the match, you can tell how this is a very aggressive play style. You know, lots of harassment in the beginning, denying expansions, hitting at multiple points at once, using Hellions to run from base to base to try to kill drones, try to kill Zerglings. All of this is really effective. This aggressive play style makes for really good play against Zerg. You essentially, the whole goal really in what you're doing is to try to deny his resource gathering. You want to hit these expansions, especially once you get to the later points of the game. Try to kill off his drones, try to kill his queens. That obviously is a huge benefit because losing that spawn larva can be really devastating to a Zerg player. And yeah, and here's another example of multi-pronged attacks. We're sending one group to this area and then sending another group to this area right here. So playing like that, multi-pronged attacks, forcing your Zerg opponent to split their army, this is something that can be very effective for you. Moving in here, going to be killing creep tumors. Here's our other group over here doing some damage. Obviously the Hellions got there first. Marines are quite slow. They need to do some more calisthenics probably. But moving in here, killing off all the drones, back of the base here, got rid of his main force, and he goes ahead and calls good game. So yeah, really good game, really effective strategy, like I said, and basically just doing constant harassment, being a pain in the butt, can be very effective for you. Alright, so let's just go over that build order one more time. Now realize, again, the opening build order was set back because of that early engineering bay harassment. But what we saw was a 10 depot, 12 barracks, 13 we saw that refinery, rather 15 we saw that refinery, 17 we saw that orbital command, 21 is when the factory went down, 22 we saw that second refinery, 29 we got the Starport at that point, getting the Armory at 31. So we started off with that Viking, doing that for some early harassment of overlords, also for scouting purposes to check his base. And then after that, getting the medevac and the Thor once the Armory is up, doing that Thor drop for some even more harassment. 58 is when that command center came down. Once you get your expansion, you are going to want to go ahead and get some additional buildings as well. Realize, you know, off one base, you can pretty much support constant production out of 3 buildings with attachments, basically. But once you expand, you're going to be able to produce more, so make sure you get those additional production buildings. Also getting upgrades as well. The really big thing that we looked at as far as tactics are concerned in this game is constant harassment. Constant harassment, really being a nuisance to your Zerg opponent, can be very effective. Dropping in multiple angles, Thor drops on the ledge, stuff like that. Really effective tactic on this particular map. So once again, guys, this has been Force from Force Strategy Gaming. If you guys like our videos and you like what's going on here, then please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. You don't want all your forces sitting here while you have kind of an open expansion here. You want to readjust your forces, you know, getting down this missile turret, maybe even putting down a supply depot wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. These are all things you want to do, but just basically think about, you know, this is your front, this is your defense, and just kind of shift it forward whenever you expand.